Welcome to rePROs Fight Back, a podcast where we explore all things reproductive health, rights, and justice. I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and I'll be helping you stay informed around issues like birth control, abortion, sex education, and LGBTQ issues, and much, much more. Giving you the tools you need to take action and fight back. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, rePROs. How's everybody doing? I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and my pronouns are she, her. So this week, I just want to give a big trigger warning at the top before we start the episode. So we are going to be talking about intimate partner violence and domestic violence. So if this is something you're not in a place to listen to, come back a different day and listen. If you have to skip it entirely, we totally understand, and we'll see you next time. This is an issue that is important to me. I think I may have mentioned this on the podcast before, but not talked about it a lot. But I am a survivor of domestic violence, and that's been a long journey to be able to claim that. I was really young and had a really poor understanding of what intimate partner violence was at that time, as many people do. I've talked about my experience with sex ed, so there was definitely no what do healthy relationships look like, none of those identifying things, and not a really good understanding, at least on my part, but I also think, broader, the way society talked about it at that time, of what domestic violence and intimate partner violence look like. I had a lot of thinking, well, it's not that bad. At least it's not this, or at least it's not that. And, as I have grown and working in the field of sexual and reproductive health and have gotten to be much more familiar with gender-based violence and intimate partner violence and all of these things, I look back on that time in my life and just, man, there were just like red flags everywhere, just everywhere. I think, this conversation around intimate partner violence, we often miss that it does happen a lot to young people, young people in high school and college, and it's not talked about as much. And that's the age I was when I was dealing with this. A lot of it was emotional abuse, and I definitely didn't see it that way at the time, right? Didn't have a real understanding of it. And I look back now and I can see, all of the controlling behaviors. I can see the way it has stuck with me for a very long time. It's been a journey, and one that as I am getting older, I feel like I'm getting to understand better and seeing how it has impacted me, and just like all these little things of like understanding it more. I think I did a lot of justifying, and, shame plays a lot in this. So a lot of denial and not talking about it with people, a lot of seeing it as my fault. And, that has really changed in my life. I've really come to see it for what it was, that I was in a really unhealthy relationship and seeing all the damage it has caused. So to me, this topic is a really important one and a really intimate one. And it was really important that we talk about it on the podcast, not just because it intersects with repro, which it does, and we'll definitely talk about it in the episode today, but because it's really important to talk about intimate partner violence and all of its forms and what it looks like, so that you can recognize it, and also so that that there's help out there. So, a couple of really important resources are the National Domestic Violence Hotline. You can go to their website, you can chat with somebody there, or you can call 1-800-799-SAFE. Another opportunity is to contact RAINN, the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. Again, their website has a chat you can use, or you can call 1-800-656-HOPE. Both of them are really great resources, so you can reach out for help if you need it. I think with that, we'll turn to this week's episode. Like I said, it's really personal, and I'm really excited to talk to Monica Edwards at Urge about this topic. So with that, let's turn to my interview with Monica. Hi, Monica. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for having me back on rePROs Fight Back.
I'm always excited to have you on. I'm excited. Definitely feels like the wrong word. I am glad that we're having you on to talk about intimate partner violence and repro. And again, glad feels weird to say.
Yeah, it does. No, I totally get it.
But we talked about this a while ago, and I was so excited that we were going to do it. And I'm so happy it's finally happening.
Definitely. Definitely is an important issue that often gets lost. So I think it's definitely important. Not a great topic, right, but definitely an important one.
So maybe we need to start a little bit at the beginning, because I think some people have like a general understanding of what intimate partner violence was. I know, like, when I was dealing with it, I didn't have like a good grasp of like everything that it encompasses. Like, I only had like really specific ideas. And so I think it's helpful to like start at the beginning of like, what is it?
Definitely good to do a level set for the folks who maybe don't know what it is, but who know it is, not sure how to put it in words. So definitely IPV, or intimate partner violence, so IPV is the acronym, takes many forms. It's defined by the Centers for Disease Control as abuse or aggression in intimate or romantic relationships. And it also can occur as physical violence, sexual violence, stalking, financial violence, and psychological aggression. And it can happen by a current or a former intimate partner. And also, too, a lot of people will think that you have to have been in a long-term relationship to experience intimate partner violence. That's not true. IPV, or intimate partner violence, can take place in relationships that are short-term, that are maybe casual dating relationships, or just maybe purely sexual relationships, but IPV can still occur in those relationships as well.
I think when we first started talking about the possibility of doing this episode, it came up in the terms of young people. And I think that's like an audience that I think a lot of people don't realize are often victims of intimate partner violence.
Definitely. 100%. Like most issues in the world, young people are often left out of the conversation when it comes to dealing with things that are harmful or that actually disproportionately impact them, despite the fact that really no one talks about it. That's true for IPV, or intimate partner violence. That's true for abortion access. That's true for dealing with climate change or environmental justice. These things disproportionately impact young people, and not only disproportionately impacts them, but it impacts them in such a unique way that it should be talked about more often, but most of the time it's not. So yeah, that's why I'm always like, yeah, we should talk about young people, especially because I myself, when I experienced intimate partner violence, was a young person.
Same.
Yeah. And when I say young people, I want folks to know I don't just mean young people who are under the age of 18, which is definitely, they are young people. But for me, that definition also includes folks that are between the ages of 18 and 30. So you can experience intimate partner violence both in your teen years or in your young adult years. So,
well, this makes me think it intersects perfectly with like another passion topic of mine that I don't get to work on as much, and that's sex ed. Right? That's something that where young people could first possibly get this information of like what healthy relationships look like would be in a comprehensive sex ed program that so many young people are denied.
Definitely. Like I said, it disproportionately impacts young people. So oftentimes this can be called teen dating violence as well. So, and the CDC found about 1 in 12 teens in the United States experience physical dating violence, and about 1 in 12 experience sexual dating violence, right? So if we have young people who are in their teen years or in their adolescent years, if you want to use technical terms used by the CDC, right? Like if we're able to reach young people in various ways, not just sex ed, but sex ed is definitely a tool in which we can reach young people and talk about, as you grow, as you begin to have not only just romantic and intimate relationships, but even just friendships with people. It's important to know about consent, about boundaries, about how to set those, how to realize and analyze when your boundaries or your consent has been crossed and ways that you can fight back. And so I definitely think sex ed is a tool. I will die on the hill that sex ed is definitely a way in which we can reach young people when it comes to talking about intimate partner violence or teen dating violence.
Yeah, I just think of all the ways that like intimate partner violence or was definitely when I was that around that age, like domestic violence was how it was talked about, was talked about as like there were huge parts of the conversation that were missing, right? Like we didn't talk about young people. It really seemed focused on physical violence and didn't talk about the full range of getting into like the emotional abuse or any of those other types of abuse that were all part of this umbrella. So that when I was dealing with it, I didn't know it was a thing. So like it didn't occur to me that that was what was happening. And it wasn't until much later being able to look back and understand like the full range of it and like being able to write off the smaller portion that was the part that I knew was wrong. Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. I totally co-sign 100%. And I definitely had a similar experience. Like, I remember like just being in that relationship that it didn't take a physical turn towards
It's
violence
not that bad.
until later on. So towards the very end of the relationship. But looking back, like there were so many, to use the TikTok trend, red flags.
Everywhere.
There were so many red flags. Like there were like financial manipulation, emotional abuse and manipulation, narcissism, like things that happened that were not positive were somehow always my fault, and I could have did something or said something better, right? And like if I had known beforehand, like, you know, these are red flags of you dealing with someone who's technically kind of emotionally and financially manipulative. Even if you don't want to use the terms abusive, at the very least, they're manipulative, right? And like if I had known that beforehand, I probably would have handled things a little bit differently. And that's not to say I maybe would have let the situation sooner, because we leave these situations on our own time, and that should be acknowledged and respected. As survivors navigate a whole bunch of things when dealing with abusive relationships or intimate partner violence. However, I just remember looking back being like, sis, you were dealing with some red flags at the very beginning.
Yes.
Like, how did you miss it?
Oh, and like the looking back now, and like even now, it's like reading things and being like, oh, I didn't even think about this red flag. And sometimes it's just so much easier to see it from the outside. I mean, as most things, right? It's like when I have friends who have dealt with similar things and being able to be like, oh, no, don't let that go. And like, but not being able to identify it at the time within myself. And like, that was for a whole host of reasons, right?
Exactly.
Not understanding that it was a problem at the time. It's harder when it's you, like a whole host of reasons.
Exactly. And I want to be on, and to all the folks listening, like in no way, shape, or form am I suggesting that like if you didn't recognize the red flags beforehand that you're somehow stupid or you're wrong. Like, right, it takes us time to understand when we're dealing with things that are not okay. Like there's an emotional response, there's your body has to respond. Like there's just so many factors that come into play. And in no way are you dumb or are you stupid or you could have done it better or you should have did this, right? Like we're all just surviving and doing the best we can in not only just in intimate relationships, but just in friendships and work relationships, just the environment in general, right? And so at whatever time you recognize that your situation wasn't okay, and you in whatever time you maybe decided to do something differently or not, right? Like that is totally okay and you are valid, right? And I just want to like say that because
no, super important. And like the shame and stigma you feel, like try not, like it's so much easier to say than it is to do. Like it's like talking about it on this episode. And actually, before we talked, I just recorded an intro talking a little bit about my experience. Like that was the first time I've been like super public on sharing it. So like it's hard and it takes a long time. And this was a long time ago for me. And it has taken me a really long time to get to this place. And like for a long time, I definitely was doing the like, oh, you were so stupid to get into this. And like, no, that is not what it is. And it's all part of the healing process, and like just know that there's support out there.
There is. And healing I also want to say for folks, especially for survivors listening, like healing is not this like linear static thing. Like you don't reach healing and it's the end of it. It's like, okay, bye. That's not how it works. Healing is an entire not linear, up and down, like not static journey. Like I'm still healing and it's been, gosh, 5 years since I left my intimate partner violence situation, right? And so like, and I'm still healing. And that's not to say that like I'm still experiencing some of the immediate effects of leaving an intimate partner violence relationship, right? There's still like some PTSD, I would say, but like I'm not in like this place where like I'm just completely like not able to do anything, but that doesn't mean I'm not still healing, right? Like it's such a journey. And so also for survivors, don't feel like your healing journey has to go a certain way or it has to take a certain turn or it has to end at a certain point or start at a certain point. It's a whole journey that is unique for you. And don't let anyone tell you that it's not.
For sure. For sure. And like, don't think it is going to start right away either, right? Like, I know like there was like definitely some of the healing that started right away, but then there was like a long time of like not even understanding the fullness of what happened. And we're talking like over a decade later of like looking back and being like, oh, I really need to process like the full range of shit that was that I didn't process
Mm-hmm.
at the time because I didn't understand it for what it was.
Definitely. Definitely. Like I left my relationship, I'd say about 3.5, 4 years ago. I didn't start my healing journey for real until like the pandemic started, right? So like that's why I'm like it doesn't start immediately after. It doesn't have to. It can. But there's just so many ways in which like healing takes place and it means so many different things for so many different people. And so like just don't think your journey has to be a certain way because it doesn't. And that is true for many reasons, including like not just being a survivor, but like at what age you experienced the violence, whether you experienced violence previous to that relationship, your race, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your gender identity. Like there's so many things that really impact the way in which we can heal and process, right? Because it's like, let's to be honest, like for women of color, for folks of color, for trans women of color in particular, like, right, we don't really get the luxury of trying to heal, right? Because we're often seen as the folks that have to like be resilient. I remember seeing a TikTok yesterday that was just pushing back on the narrative that like Black women have to be resilient all the time. And it's just like, oh, you're so strong. And it's like, yeah, I'm strong because the alternative would be I would be dead. I don't get why we're glorifying Black women just having to be resilient all the time. And I think that's true when it comes to like intimate partner violence and just like folks of color experiencing violence. We often think that they're supposed to be resilient and like strong and like not fall apart, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, that's not how that works. And so, especially to survivors of color out there, like specifically survivors who are Black, like, no, you don't have to be resilient. You don't have to be strong. Like you can fall apart. It's okay. And I want to normalize that. I want to normalize folks, specifically Black folks, being able to fall apart and not having to be strong all the time. So
I think that's a really important addition to this conversation.
thank you.
Okay. So let's talk about how does this connect with reproductive health? Like how is this all connected? Because it is, right?
It definitely it's not. I'm kidding.
And end a podcast. That was it.
No, definitely. So I always love to quote the amazing repro justice definition by SisterSong. Shout out to SisterSong. Shout out to Monica Ray Simpson and all the folks who began the reproductive justice movement, like Abel Mabel and also Loretta Ross. Like, just shout out to y'all because I use this definition like daily,
Yes.
not only just in doing my work, but just in the way I live my life. So for folks who don't know what reproductive justice is, because it's often been used recently as like a buzzword, and it's like, no, it's not the same as reproductive rights.
Yeah.
So reproductive justice is defined by SisterSong as the ability to have children, to not have children, and to parent the children we do have in safe and sustainable communities. And so how this relates to intimate partner violence, right? Like we're not living in safe and sustainable communities if we're experiencing violence. And that not only includes intimate partner violence, that includes state violence. So police violence, violence by ICE, etc. And so therefore, intimate partner violence is directly connected to the fight for reproductive health, rights, and justice, right? So for example, intimate partner violence can include sexual violence, or it can include, and that includes intentionally sabotaging contraception, for example. It can include things like stalking, which is basically removing a condom during intercourse without a partner's consent, right? And so these are just ways in which intimate partner violence is connected to reproductive health and rights and justice.
Yeah, I think that it's really important to talk about how these are all connected because, yeah, you have birth control sabotage or like you talked about stealthing and like increased risk of STIs. I also found really depressing, like reading the Turnaway Study and talking about
Mm-hmm.
people who were denied access to a wanted abortion then more often stayed with their abusive partners for longer. Like they may have left them eventually, but they stayed in that relationship much longer than they might have if they were able to get the wanted abortion.
Yes, yes, 100%, right? We know there are examples of folks who are seeking abortion care and are unable to do so because they are in an intimate partner violence situation, or it just makes it that much harder. And on top of it being harder because you're in an intimate partner violence situation, right? So let's just say you have a partner who is violent financially, right? It doesn't even have to be like a physical aspect. Let's just say there's financial manipulation, right? And so you're unable to really access your accounts without your partner knowing. You're not really to do much without your partner knowing. If you're trying to access abortion and you're living in a state, I'm just going to say my home state of Alabama, y'all, roll tide, no shade to Alabama. I'm the only person that can talk bad about Alabama because I'm from Alabama. None of the rest of y'all can. But let's just say you're in Alabama and you have laws like that make you have a mandatory waiting period before you can access abortion, right? Like that's another day or two added before you can even access abortion. And you add a compounding situation of intimate partner violence on top of that, right? Like that's just barriers on top of barriers
Or being able to
before you can.
travel.
Exactly. That's just traveling to the care. That's not even getting the care. So again, that's why when people say, for example, like abortion bans, and we try to say, well, oh, it's only this ban, it's only a mandatory waiting period, it's only like a certain amount of week ban. Like, no, these things mean things for real people, especially for folks who are experiencing violence, right? If you're forced to wait 72 hours before you can access abortion, right? And you're dealing with a violent situation, like that is a barrier to you receiving the health care that you need and you deserve. And it's not right.
Or if you're in Texas right now and to get that care, you have to leave the state. Like, are you going to be able to leave the situation you're in to travel that far to access the care you need?
Exactly. And then we were talking about young people
Oh,
earlier,
yeah.
right? Like let's just say you're a young person. Let's just say you're not me when I was experiencing violence. So I was in my early to mid 20s when I experienced it. Let's just say you're under 18. Like you're trying to access abortion care while in a violent situation. At the same time, you may not have access to transportation. So how are you going to get the care that you need, right? Like, so it's just, we talk about these things in a way that's like, oh, well, this is just a separate issue. This is this issue. But when you really think about it, all of these barriers and all these issues intersect in a way that actually impact real people, especially people who are already systematically oppressed by the systems that be.
And I think another really important area of this to bring in is like, how does this impact maternal health and maternal mortality? Because, yes, there are all these ones before that, but also we know that it has a real harm during pregnancy. And I don't know if this is still true. I think it's still true. Homicide is the leading cause of maternal mortality. Like, that's wild.
Wow. Yeah. And I think there was like a Guttmacher report a couple years ago that said that 4% of pregnant women, and y'all, I want to name that, like I'm using stats that say
Right.
women and men. And I want to really acknowledge it, right? Like not just, we're not just talking about in gender binary terms, right? We know that queer and trans folks need access to abortion. We know that trans folks get pregnant. We know that trans folks experience intimate partner violence, right? So like, I'm just quoting stats here. That's why I'm using this gender binary language. But I definitely, obviously we know that like not just women deal with these issues. But the report said that 4% of pregnant women reported being physically abused by a current or former partner, and that it was linked to poor maternal health outcomes, right? So it definitely impacts and intersects with the issue of maternal health.
Okay, so this is all terrible.
Yes, very terrible.
How do we address this? Like, how do we address these issues?
I think a good start is things like this, having conversations that aren't siloed. Like we talk about abortion and we talk about reproductive health care and health and rights and justice. And then we talk about intimate partner violence and domestic violence and teen dating violence and Me Too and sexual violence and the movement against just violence, period. But we often don't connect the two. We often silo them and talk about, oh, this impacts X amount of people and this issue impacts X amount of people. And we're literally talking about the same people. And both of these issues impact them, but we don't talk about it in that way. And I think one of the things we can do to address it is we have to start talking about it, right? Like I would say, and this is just me talking from my perspective as a survivor, like I still feel like we don't take intimate partner violence seriously. I still feel like we don't talk about it in a way that talks about solving it. That's not carceral feminism, right? We still often talk about intimate partner violence in terms of reporting, right? In which we know there are a multitude of reasons why survivors may or may not report, about involving police, when we know specifically for Black folks, like involving the police, no. Like I remember with my situation, like one of the reasons I didn't call the police, an incident happened, and one of the reasons I didn't call the police is because I think a month or two before that, Philando Castile had just been murdered by police. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm a young Black woman. My partner's a young Black male. We're very Black. We're unambiguously Black. There's no, oh, she could be this and he could be, no, we're Black. And we're in the South. And am I expected to call the police, not knowing if this can end up as a more escalated situation, right? Like, so we don't talk about these issues in a way that really reach people that are being disproportionately impacted. And so I think that's one of the first things we can do is stop siloing each issue and start having real conversations about how they impact communities that are already oppressed.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that is absolutely 100% true. And I also feel like you still see a lot of the like, how to identify the signs and not like how not to be an abuser, right? Like, here's
Right.
what you need to do to be in a healthy relationship for on your end, not here's how you need to identify when you're in an unhealthy relationship.
Exactly. And I mean, both things are needed, but I definitely think like a lot of times we don't talk about the ways in which people who cause harm need to be held accountable. And I say held accountable in a very general way. There's no specific way that I think people should be held, right? Because that's also very subjective to the survivor, right? But right, like we don't talk about it in a way that really holds people or just names that, hey, you caused harm. And like there needs to be a conversation about, or maybe not a conversation, like there needs to be something that moves things forward, right? But it's often just like, hey, here are the signs that you're in an abusive relationship, and here's a hotline you can call. And like that's helpful, but it's also like, when are we going to start sending the message that you should not be harming people?
It just like takes me back to like conversations around sexual assault of like, you're ruining his life, right? Like this accusation is like, and like that's the worst thing you could do. And I feel like falls into like that same bucket of like, it's not talked about because like the accusation would be like, I don't know.
Cough. Brock Turner. Cough.
Right?
and like it's just like, oh, and it's just, and we have this fake concern for cancel culture that does not help. And it's like, they're going to be canceled. And it's like,
Louis C.K. just won a Grammy.
Right. I'm like, no one has actually been canceled. So I don't know what you're talking about for cancel culture. Like stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but I would say those are some of the main things to address it. It's just like really having conversations that bring people to the table so that they can talk about their perspectives, especially the perspectives that often get lost. Because oftentimes when we think about, and that's not true just for intimate partner violence, that's true for other issues too, like repro and abortion access. Like I remember coming into the movement and being kind of like, I don't know, because this has traditionally been like a cis heterosexual white space. So like I'm like, I don't know if I belong here. Thank God for the framework of reproductive justice. But like I just remember walking in like, this movement has, left me behind most of the time. And so, right, and when it comes to intimate partner violence, it's kind of the same for survivors who are Black and other survivors of color, not just Black, Latina, Asian American, and Pacific Islander, especially Indigenous women, right? Indigenous women have some of the highest rates of intimate partner and domestic violence, right? And like, when we think about the issue, like, and we see media and billboards and memes and all the things trying to raise awareness, like what pictures do we see? Like I want people to really think about, like, when I see something talking about addressing intimate partner violence, what do I see? What images come to mind? And if the image is one of a cisgender heterosexual white woman, that is part of the problem, because you're only seeing survivors as one thing, and that erases other folks who are experiencing violence.
Yeah, that makes me think of, and you may have mentioned this, and so sorry if it's repetitive, but like the LGBTQ community and like how hard, like we did not have the Violence Against Women bill reauthorized because Republicans were so intransigent about adding in LGBTQ community. Like,
yeah,
that's fucked up, yo. Like, come on. Like, these communities are also experiencing the same thing.
Exactly, right? And we shouldn't be, in 2022 on Beyonce's internet, we should not be in a place where conservatives are blocking bills that can aim to help protect folks and not protect, but just address an issue by blocking it because it centers or acknowledges, honestly, queer and trans folks, right? Because I mean, when we talk about VAWA, like VAWA can be problematic in itself, right? It's technically a funding bill that funds police budget. Like it's a really, really long bill, so I'm not gonna get into all the things, but like technically VAWA in itself is problematic. But right, like we're all working under a really flawed and problematic system that got to go. But until it does, we kind of got to work within it. And that was a way in which folks were trying to kind of take VAWA in the ways that it had been implemented before and make it so that it really does center survivors who are not just cis heterosexual folks. And we got, not we, because that was the movement that works on intimate partner violence. So not we, but the folks who do that work every day got a lot of pushback because of that provision. And that's just sad. Yes. And these are the same people who are passing anti-trans bills right now, who are passing anti-critical race theory bills right now, who are passing abortion bans right now. So again, it all comes circular and it is all connected, which is why I say one of the ways we can address this is by having more intersectional conversations.
And not just to say that LGBTQ community was the only community they were blocking it for. It also was including the Native community. So they were blocking it for both have disproportionate harm.
Exactly.
Don't want people to think I did not see the Native piece as well. Okay. So we already kind of got to this, but we always like to end with like, what can our audience do? How can they help on these issues?
Definitely. I love my federal policy work for the most part. I had to put for the most part in there. But I am someone who will die on the hill that the real change is going to happen in the states and local communities. So one of the things you can do to fight back is get involved with organizations and advocates in your community that are working on intimate partner violence, and not just any, but the ones that are working on it in an intersectional way, that are working on it in an anti-carceral way, right? Like when we start working and supporting the folks who are already doing the work in our communities, right, that's where the change happens. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people go start an organization, and I'm like, there's literally an org like 10 minutes down the road that does the exact same thing. You could have just went there. Like, so I really want folks to get invested in talk more with people in your community and find the people that are already doing the work and support them. And then if even if you can't join, right? Like if you can't join the org, or you can't commit to volunteering, or you can't commit to policy strategy sessions or what have you, right? Give them your money if you have it. If you're privileged and you have the money, give them the money. Support the people that are already doing the work. That's how you can fight back. And then, of course, I wouldn't be a policy person if I didn't say this. Contact your legislators, like contact them. And like, it doesn't always have to be a defensive fight, right? Like, I think as a movement, just movements in general, like we're so used to all the horrible things that we've kind of become accustomed to just always being defensive and fighting back, right? But we can also be proactive, and we can also like reach out to our legislators and reach out to policymakers and champions and just say like, hey, this is something I want to see. Like, what can you do to implement something like this?
Oh, Monica, thank you so much for being here. I actually had a good time talking to you about some really horrible things.
No, it's really horrible and it's all shitty.
Yeah.
But I definitely like enjoyed talking about this because this is an issue that's important to me and something that is directly impacting me and something I have not really spoken about. Like I've talked about it in like op-eds and like tweeted about it a few times, but never like have gotten into really a lot of public acknowledgement of like the specifics. I think maybe once before. And so like, if I can like help one person feel seen, that's enough for me. So like, I'm just happy to have been here and that we were able to have this conversation.
I'm happy we were able to muddle our way through our first time doing this publicly together.
Yes.
So thank you for being here as I shared mine as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing with me. Wow. Yeah. This is heavy, but definitely you are valid. All the survivors out there, y'all are valid. And just take it one day at a time, friends.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, everybody. I hope you, and it feels wrong to say enjoyed this conversation, but I hope you enjoyed the conversation I had with Monica. Like I said, it was really important to me that we do this. I want to just give one last shout out and connection to resources that you can turn to if you need help. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE, or you can go to their website and chat with somebody, or you can go to RAIN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network Hotline. And again, you can chat with them at their website or call 1-800-656-HOPE. And with that, if you have anything you want to talk to me about or have questions or topics you would like for us to cover, as always, you can reach out to me at my email at Jenny, and that's JENNIE at reprosfightback.com. Or you can reach out to us on social media, and we are on Facebook and Twitter at Repros Fight Back and on Instagram at ReprosFB. And with that, I will see y'all in 2 weeks. For more information, including show notes from this episode and previous episodes, please visit us at our website at reprosfightback.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at reprosfightback and on Instagram at reprosfb. If you like our show, please help others find it by sharing it with your friends, and please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.